Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. And today we're starting another new story here on the channel, and one that you guys have been waiting for a while now. That being Eminence in Shadow, The Shadow's Web. What if Sid Kagenou was Spider-Man? Season 1, Part 1. As always, if you're new to the channel or if you're a regular and like what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Now, Eminence in Shadow is a more recent anime to come into the mainstream, and while it wasn't something I was going to do at first, the more I thought about it, the more I decided, why not tell a completely unique story? One that has elements of the Spider-Man mythos, but also takes elements from other aspects of the world of Marvel Comics. So, safe to say, while this story will have some things you've seen before, there are also going to be some new things that you might not be expecting, as well as bringing in some characters that may not get used very often, but are reimagined and retooled to be shown in a more prominent light. There's a lot that I have in store for you here with this story, so I do hope you'll stick around and see everything that I have to offer. But anyway, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. A young man sat on the back of a train, overlooking the countryside. Before long, he'd be arriving to the capital to attend Midgar Academy of Dark Knights. The young man's name was Sid Kagenou. The train was mostly empty, and for his cart in particular, there was no one there. He chose to sit all the way in the back, just lounging, looking out, watching the fields and the forestry that passed him by. It was then that he thought about her name, Nishino Akane. Oh yeah, how could I forget her? She was the last person that I saved in my old life. For many people in this world, there's an element of wonder, a veil, if you will, a belief so strong that things that seem impossible become possible. Some call it the child's imagination. Some call it the delusion of grandeur. It has many different names, many different titles. It takes many different substances. But as we grow up, that veil, that world that we used to live in, it starts to become undone. Before long, the veil, it becomes nothing more but a mere mirage. Every now and again, it used to be that you could see the wonders of the world. But as time went on, you grew up. You took on responsibilities that came with the real world. School, job, a future, potentially family. You had to make decisions that truly affected you in the real world. There was no time for make-believe or pretend. You used to be whatever you wanted to be, but you became what society demanded of you. But there are some who never give up their, what many would consider, childish ways. There are some who continue on and persist, even as the world tries to steer them in another direction. Sid Kagenou was like that. Well, Sid was not his original name, but it was the name he went by now. In his old life, he wanted to be a hero, but he didn't want to just be any hero. He wanted to be the true embodiment of justice, not just a regular hero. No, for Sid, the hero is very flawed. Many say they want to be the hero, but to be honest, the hero is the worst thing you can be. But why was that? A hero may say that their responsibility is to the world, but in actuality, a hero's responsibility is to the people that he serves, the people that he protects. The problem with that is that when you serve one group of people, it can be harder to help others. It soon becomes that the common good is only good to those whom you are protecting. It's why the idea of having heroes all around the world never really appealed to Sid. I mean, if two countries have superheroes and both countries were to go to war, then isn't it obvious that the heroes would be called in? I mean, look at someone like Superman from the comic books. I mean, sure, he claims to be a hero of the world, but if World War III broke out, he's obviously going to have to take a side, isn't he? No, even if you have the best of intentions, a hero has its limits. But if you could become something greater, if you could embody something entirely different, you could truly become a hero. No, something more. You have to strive to be something beyond even what a hero is. To become the embodiment of justice. Justice can never discriminate. True justice can never be biased. It can never pick a side. When it comes to true justice, there is only right or wrong. Justice is not bound by law or tradition. Justice is not bound by nationality or pride. Justice comes whether the people want it or not. That is simply a fact. And to be someone who can carry out that justice, to have that kind of power, that's what Sid wanted. He wanted to be that sort of power in the world, to be able to affect it, to change it, to be the person who could turn the tide at any moment without ever having his presence acknowledged. If anything, it was better that way. He wanted to be nothing more but a whisper, a rumor, something that could never be proven, not in the sense of having a name to a face, but in his actions. He wanted his actions to speak for themselves, for the world to see the change he could inflict by his actions alone. That is why Sid, why he stressed, why he fought to become the Shadow. But how was he given this opportunity? It's obvious that the world he came from, he was nothing more but a human. It didn't matter how hard he trained himself, no matter how much he studied or practiced. In the end, a human could only do so much. There was only but so much that you could achieve in that world. It was one night while he was training alone in the forest, when by chance, something bit him on his hand. He assumed it was something akin to a spider bite, and then the next thing he knew, his eyes glowed. An aura, one of an emerald, a teal, if you will. His eyes glowed as he could only see but a light he had to follow. He followed the light without any rhyme or reason, knowing that it was something he had to do. And just as quickly as he followed the light, all light vanished from his eyes. When he awoken once more, he found himself reborn in a new world, a world where he was the younger son to a minor noble family of the Kagenous. He was the younger brother to his older sister, Claire Kagenou. For Sid, though, this world was everything he could have imagined. A world where magic was real and where the laws and the limitations in his world did not affect him. It was on the boy's 4th birthday, however, that he came down with a terrible fever. For 7 days and 7 nights, he lied in his bed fast asleep. At least to the outside world, that's how it seemed. But on the inside, Sid came face to face with it. It was a being made of light. He could tell from its figure and shape that it was that of a female. She seemed like a goddess. You? Are you the reason why I'm here? You could say that. It is nice to finally meet you, Sid Kagenou. Well, I gotta say, this is definitely a lot more than I was expecting. You're a lot more calmer than I expected you to be. Well, in the end, what other choice do I have? No point freaking out. Besides, I imagine that to the outside world I'm probably unconscious or something. A fever, you want to say? But it's obvious the only reason why I came down with it is so that you could speak to me. I was perfectly healthy 1 minute, and the next thing I know, my temperature is rising and I'm passing out. This was your way of trying to contact me, wasn't it? It was. I must say, you are a very perceptive boy. It's why I'm happy that I chose you. You chose me. So, you were the cause of that little accident on the road. If you wanted my attention, all you had to do was ask. Was killing me really all that necessary? But you do not seem perturbed by your death. Well, why should I be? It's what I would expect from you as an answer. You are not perturbed by your death because you knew that there was something greater. You want to achieve more than what your world had to offer. And I am here to give it to you. Or rather, I'm here to offer you a choice. A choice I can only offer you once, and I can never give to you again. Is that so? So tell me, what is this offer? I can give you back the life you once had. What? I can give you back the life that of which you lost. I can return you to that very moment in time. I can save you. But you will give up everything you are. Everything you ever were. Everything you could be. Is this like a blue pill, red pill sort of thing? I see you like to reference many sort of phenomena from your old world. But I will humor you. Yes, you could say that this is your blue pill, red pill moment. This is the moment in your life where everything will change. You can accept the truths that are before you, or you can accept your old reality and all of the limitations that come with it. The young man would sit down and listen to the entity as it spoke. My name is Arachne, and I am the goddess of the spider. The goddess of the spider, huh? No more other intimidating animals for you to use? I am quite powerful, but there are limits to what even I can do. You see, in our world long ago, there was a great battle against a entity known as Diablos. In order to defeat him, the goddess used their powers to seal him away. Many of the gods and goddesses that I once knew died tragically, and I was all that remained. I am the last god of my world. I see. And I'm going to take a guess that even with the sacrifice of your pantheon, Diablos was not completely defeated. He was sealed successfully. However, there is still those who wish to see him revived. They are known as the Cult of Diablos. They have been working tirelessly to undo the seal, but there are limits to what even they can do. But I am afraid to say that in the last few centuries, they have gotten close to the point where they are able to undo the seal only enough to leak out some of his power. So they leaked out some of this Diablos power, and I'm willing to bet that they've been siphoning and using it ever since. Sort of like a well that runs with water. Precisely. However, the power they've managed to siphon off from the seal, it's not enough to cause the world lasting harm, but they are growing in strength and becoming a force that cannot easily be contained. That is why I have chosen people from your world to fight on my behalf as my champions. And I'm guessing because I was chosen, your last champion died? Unfortunately so. That is why I have chosen you. You come from a world where many do not believe, and for good reason. Magic does not exist in your world, at least not inherently. So, you sent the spider. The spider was supposed to pick a champion. The champion was me, and it led me to my death. And that's why I've been brought here. That is the gist of it all. But still, it was not lawful for what I have done, and as such, on the 4th birthday of my chosen champion, I come and I give them a choice. For 7 days and 7 nights, they remain in solitude. That is why for 7 days you will be in a coma of sorts. You will not die, but they will not be able to awaken you. This will give you the time to make the choice. If you wish to continue as my champion, then it is so. But if you choose not to, then I will return you to that point in time in which you were taken. However, your memory will be erased, and you will never remember anything that has happened. I will be nothing more but a faint memory to you, a mere dream. And try as though you might, you will never be able to reach me or this world ever again. Both are very tempting offers. But why would you ask someone like me if I want to go back? This sounds like exactly what I've been looking for. You say that now. You say that because you feel like you've found an escape, but I assure you this is anything but. In this world, you will face many trials and hardships. There will be many moments in your life that test your will and your resolve. And I must warn, none of my avatars have ever died the most gracious of deaths. You are not just the protector of this world, but of many worlds. If Diablos awakens, he will have power far greater than anything you can comprehend. And even with my help, it would not be enough to stop him. The only way to guarantee this world's safety is to make sure that Diablos is never revived under any circumstance, and to wipe out anyone who attempts to make his revival. That is your purpose, and that is your role. I see. Are there any parameters for how I am supposed to achieve this objective? No. How you choose to achieve your goal and how you achieve this, it is all entirely up to you. I can only offer you my power and my guidance in your moments of need, but your methods are yours and yours alone. And I wish to see the type of hero you will become. Actually, that's your first mistake. I will do this, but if you think I'm going to become some sort of hero, then I am afraid you are gravely mistaken. No, I'm going to become something else. Something entirely different. I'm going to become what this world needs and not what it wants. I imagine there are plenty of heroes, but I will be one that stands even above them. So I don't need 7 days to wait. I don't need to change my mind. I've made peace with what I've left behind in my old world, and I don't ever plan on going back. So you can wake me up, or you can let me sit here and relax. Either way, my decision is final. Very well. Then now, the woman would place her hand on his forehead. Take my blessing, Sid Kagenou, and become what you need to be, what you desire. Shortly after, Sid Kagenou would awaken, now with a newly found vigor, his strength, his speed, his resolve. He had free range to do whatever he wanted and whatever he saw fit. And now, it was time to take life by the horns. For Sid, he knew that to live the life he wanted, he would have to be inconspicuous. He would have to become a true NPC. He didn't want to stand out. No reason for him to. Operating in the shadows is what worked best for him. So he never chose to stand out. He wasn't extraordinary, but he wasn't entirely ordinary. There was that sweet spot, the coveted sweet spot. To become a face in the crowd, one of many. To be everywhere but be nowhere. Of course, Sid took time acclimating himself to his newfound abilities, not just with the world of magic, but with the blessing of the goddess. He not only had enhanced strength, speed, and reflexes, but including a powerful sixth sense. He called it spider sense. He also crafted for himself many various weapons and other sort of tools to accomplish his task. Among them were his magic gauntlets of sort. They had the ability to store any sort of magic he didn't use, to amplify his strength even further when necessary. He also found that using his magic, he could make and conjure webs at will. It made swinging around larger buildings and areas with ease, as well as having the abilities and dabbling with shadow. As far as his attire was concerned, he found two looks that suited him well. One for inside, when he was speaking among those whom he trusted, and whenever he had to go to action. This was his suit form and his hooded form. It was around the time that he was 12 years old that Sid made his first acquaintance. It was when he was out one night dealing with some bandits. He figured that if he was going to fund his operations, who better to steal from than those who had already stolen? Maybe not the best logic, but even though he came from a noble family, they were still a minor noble family. Meaning they made decent enough money to live a comfortable and what some could say was a lavish lifestyle, but everything in this world still cost money, whether it had magic or not. Among many of the bandits they had to deal with, one of them named Flint Marco, who had the ability of turning his body into sand. He was definitely a more tougher foe that Sid had to deal with, but being well versed in magic, he had enough ways of countering the sand monstrosity. A well-placed strike to the chest before imbuing him with unlimited volts of lightning magic, causing the sand to crystallize and turn into glass, leaving him nothing but a hollow statue. Afterwards, Sid would place a seal on him, making him unable to turn back into what he used to be, before dragging his body to a deep, deep river and chucking him inside. Well, until he found a better way of trying to kill him, this would probably be worse than death, being stuck as a glass statue, sitting at the bottom of a river for all of eternity. He'll probably find something else to do later. But his main focus was this weird blob-like amalgamation that was in a cage. At first, he wasn't sure what to do with it. It was something that had been mutated, obviously. The most humane thing to do would have been just to kill it in that moment, but Sid had other ideas. After trial and error, he eventually got the blob to revert back to what it used to be. That being an elven girl. A girl that he would name Alpha. Sid didn't have to waste any time making up a lie or telling her anything she didn't need to know. In the end, she had no recollections of what this world was, or at least who she used to be. As such, she would make a fine ally in Sid's fight against the cult of Diablos. Sid would explain to her the truth about who he was. Well, maybe not the part about him coming from another world. That might have seemed a bit too ridiculous, but he would prove that he was blessed by the gods, and that he was the one thing that stood between this world, all worlds, and annihilation. As such, Alpha from that day forth would stand by his side, and she would recruit allies to join him, that being in Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, and Eta, the 7 girls alongside Sid. They became known as Shadow Garden. They would begin their hunt for the cult of Diablos all around the countryside, finding whatever information or clues they could. From what they were able to gather, there was another country, a country far off to the east. It was said that it was kept away from Midgard by large mountainous ranges that weren't easy to traverse. It was known as Mesfault, the land of fire and crimson. It was said that the ruler of this land was known only as the Red Queen. The country of Mesfault were the enemies of Midgar. However, dividing the two countries were known only as the Dark Mountains. They were large mountains, but they were far greater than anything you might think. It was said that to traverse these very lands was to court death itself. It wasn't easy to pass any army through these mountainous regions, and as such, it was just easier for the two sides to simply hold serve, since an invasion by either force would not be fruitful or productive. As far as Sid and for his family, he continued on with his mundane and ordinary life and existence, all while his sister continued on gaining popularity and notoriety. Of course, there was the incident, though, an event where his sister was kidnapped, and by members who were part of the cult of Diablos. This proved to be a rather productive lead for Sid, as not only was his sister saved in the process, but he gained more information on the cult, and seeing now that they had infiltrated Midgar, and even more so, that they were making their way through the ranks. The fact that a former high-ranking soldier could be responsible for such a thing, although, why had he targeted his sister? That was something that needed to be answered. But, for now, he could only continue on doing what he had. And, what was more of a surprise, was when Alpha and the other members of Shadow Garden were deciding to take their leave, believing that if they all spread out, they could gather more information. Sid decided that it was for the best. While he appreciated having Shadow Garden by his side, he didn't like over-relying on them. After all, he had to have some fun with this new life of his, and he couldn't just sit around in the shadows waiting for the information to come to him. He had to go and get the information. So being on his own, training on his own, and growing in his skills, that was what truly motivated him. Time would pass, eventually 3 years, and Sid would soon find himself now attending Midgar Academy, the land of the Dark Knights. When he arrived, he chose to stay in humble means, staying in an apartment far off from campus instead of living in the dorms. It offered him more freedom and solitude. He did take to making some friends, those who were probably as inconspicuous as he was, all 3 low ranks on the totem pole. The first boy being named Ned Leeds, the second one, a boy named Hobie Davis. Of course, they went about going through their school days as any first years would, just being in the background, getting into the usual hijinks, nothing too out of the ordinary. Although, when Sid failed to pass one of his tests, he was forced to face a punishment, that being asking out one of the most popular girls in school, a girl named Alexia, a princess of Midgar. Of course, Sid expected to get completely rejected, and he had no qualms or fuss about it. But to his surprise, she actually accepted. And what was worse, she was not looking to break up with him anytime soon. Of course, though, it didn't take long for Sid to realize that the girl had her own ulterior motives, and that in actuality, the only reason she had agreed to it was because, 1, she overheard them talking about it and she pried information from the other 2, and also because she already had an engagement to another well-known student, a boy named Zenon, who was the proctor for the fencing and sword arts class. Of course, a boy of his caliber, for the 2 of them to get married, it would make sense politically, and he was good-looking, charming, and came from a wealthy family, so it had its benefits. But still, Alexia had no desire to be with him in any way, shape, or form, and she was just using Sid as a way of getting back at him and getting him to back off. So, I'm nothing but a rebound, it seems. Well, that seems very side player-ish of me. Hopefully, the sooner this is over, the sooner she'll be done and leave me alone. But still, there were its perks. I mean, she was paying at least, and she was paying good. And even with, again, the funds he got from his family, it wouldn't be enough to fund his operations. So, he was going to be a good little boy and bark whenever he was told. Daddy needed them gold coins. But even still, being with Alexia wasn't all bad. The girl had her good points some of the time. In fact, Sid can honestly admit that she wasn't that bad at all. Although, in the end, the idea of pursuing a relationship would be out of the question. In the end, he had his duty in his life, his purpose. The only way that he could keep this world safe, keep all worlds safe, was if he continued to be the one in shadow. As such, this was only temporary, but he could at least enjoy himself for now. It could be a fond memory he carried with him in his life. Of course, that was going to be easier said than done. For you see, the next day, as Sid had dropped Alexa off at home, as he arrived to the school campus with his friends, Zenon, along with a few other guards, were waiting for him. Not allowing him to enter onto the school campus, Zenon would stop him at the gate, explaining that Alexia had never returned home last night, and seeing as how he was the last one with her, it made him a prime suspect. Zenon and his allies already had their hands on the hilt of their swords, ready to draw them. But before they could do so, they could hear a noise hovering from above. A being dressed in white and gold that appeared to be on a glider of sorts would descend. Calm down, Zenon. There's no need for things to get violent. I got word of the situation and I was already on my way. There's no need to make a scene. Sid would turn and come face to face with the Golden Warrior speaking to him. You're Sid Kagenou, am I right? I am. And to what do I owe the pleasure, Gold Goblin? On behalf of the country of Midgar, I am going to have to take you in for questioning. Now, there's no reason for us to make a scene here. We just have some things we need to ask you. I hope you'll understand. Sid looked around, seeing that he was completely surrounded, and knowing that now was not the time to blow his cover. He put his hands in the air and placed them behind his head. So far, his first month at school, and things had not gone the way he expected. This concludes Eminence and Shadow, The Shadow's Web. What if Sid Kagenou was Spider-Man? Season 1, Part 1. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Spire's Thesis. What if Shinji Ikari was Spider-Man? Part 8. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.